Hello dear students. Today I am going to explain you chapter number 8, The Open Window. This chapter is written by Hector Hugh Munro, better known by the pen name, and he was a British writer. His pen name, or we can say another name which we known by everyone, that is Saki, and he was a British writer. He is considered a master of the short story and is often compared to other famous writers such as O. Henry and Dorothy Parker. His stories are clever, witty, and mischievous, that is, full of entertainment, or we can say naughty. In this text or this chapter, he writes about a young girl who tells ridiculous stories to suit herself and the situation and how it affects others. So, let us start. My aunt will be down in a few minutes, Mr. Nuttall said a very confident young lady of 15. Here, in the first line, it is given there's a girl or a young lady that age is 15-year-old, and that she said in a very confident manner that my aunt will be down in a few minutes, Mr. Nuttall. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me, or in the meantime, you just talk with me or this thing. As Frampton Nuttall, the person who just came their house, followed the young lady into the quaint drawing room, he tried to say the correct something which should flatter the niece without disparaging the aunt who was yet to come. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these visits to total strangers would do much to help the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. What that means, as Frampton Nuttall followed the young lady into the that quaint means their clever drawing room. It means all the things seems unique and confusing, and he tried to say the correct something which should flatter means that praise someone to make them feel more important. So he just tried to the correct something to the knees without disparaging. Disparaging means saying something to make someone feel less important or respected. By saying this thing, the aunt who was yet to come. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these visits to total strangers, and basically he don't like to just go or visit to total strangers, would do much to help the nerve cure. Nerve cure means a process by which a person who is always very afraid, worried, or anxious becomes better. He doesn't like that much to meet total stranger, would do much, but he thinks that maybe that if I just meet with strangers, that I'm just going better, which he was supposed to be undergoing, because he's just going undergoing with some this kind of problem. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to move to this little village. And then Mr. Frampton said, I know how it will be, because his sister already said that when he was preparing to move this little village, you will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. It means that he said that you will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. Moping means being unhappy and acting in a way that is not positive. Then I shall give you a letters of introduction to all the people I know there. So I just gave you a list of people whom I already know you. So you just go in their house and meet some people, and you feel better, and you just create yourself and like live life like a living soul. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice, and his sister already told him that yes, some of the people are already nice, but I don't yet remember properly. But yeah, some are quite nice. Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady for whom he was waiting with one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. Now he just think about that the lady, because he was waiting for that lady, because one of the letter of introduction which his sister gave to him. So he was waiting for the Mrs. Sappleton to talk about something. Then he just wondered that came to the nice division or not. It means that that Mrs. Sappleton is quite nice or not. Do you know many of the people round here? Asked the niece. Now, niece asked, do you know many of the people round here? When she judged that they had sufficient silent communication, it means both are sitting there and both are just talk little, and then suddenly she realized that there is little or silent communication is there. So she just asked a question, do you know many of the people around here? Then Mr. Frampton Nuttall said, hardly a soul. It means like none of them exactly, one or two are like that. My sister was staying here 4 years ago and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. And then he further said that I don't know exactly all the peoples, but yeah, my sister was staying here 4 years back and she gave me also a letter of introduction to some of the people here. And then he made the last statement in a voice that showed that he felt he had a mistake and was sad about it. And like in that tone of voice he just say it. Then, practically nothing about my aunt, continued the confident young lady. Then the lady again said, then you know nothing about my aunt, or practically means here almost you know nothing. Then you know nothing about my aunt. Only her name and address, admitted the caller. That means Frampton Nuttall just said only her name and address. He was wondering whether Mrs. Sappleton was married or widowed, and he just think about that. She's married. She was married or widowed. Something about the room seemed to suggest that a man usually occupied it. Then her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago, said the child. Then the young lady again said, her great tragedy means in her life there is a great tragedy, and that tragedy happened just 3 years ago. That would be after your sister's time, and that or exactly after your sister's time. Her tragedy? Asked Frampton. Somehow, in the restful country, spot tragedies seemed out of place. Then it means that like remaining people in the country, just yes, some have tragedies, but what her tragedy is like, it seemed like out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece. Then this is the most funny and the interesting line, that you may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece. Then she said, why don't you ask me that why we open this window in the October afternoon, indicating a large French window that open into a lawn. It is quite warm for the time of the year, said Frampton. But has that window got anything to do with the tragedy? Then Frampton said, yeah, it is a warm, that warm afternoon, but maybe that window got some anything with regarding the tragedy. Then, out through the window, 3 years ago, my aunt's husband, her two young brothers, went off for their day's shooting. And then she said, out through that window, 3 years ago, my aunt's husband and her two young brothers went for the day's shooting and they never came back. In crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting ground, all three drowned in a dangerous piece of bog. It means that the crossing of a moor means an open area of high land covered with rough grass. So crossing this moor to their favorite snipe. Snipe is a kind of a bird with a long straight beak. that lives near river to shoot that or to go shoot for the snipe, and all three drowned in a dangerous piece of bog, that means a wet ground or the soft ground. It had been that dreadful wet summer, and the places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Here's the child's voice, lost his confident note. Now, she just said these lines by that in a fully emotionally manner, and now his confident note is like vanished or lost, and she explained all the tragedy likewise. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday and walk in at that window just as they use it. And then aunt just always think about that one day they will come back. So they she always open that window like they used to do. That is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dark. Poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out, her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing Bertie, where do you bound, as he always did to tease her because she said it annoyed her. Do you know, sometimes on still quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through the window. Now again, just this paragraph again said by the little girl. And what is this, that poor aunt always just think about that someday they will come back, and also explain whole thing, that is her husband wear white waterproof coat with his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, just sing a song like why do you bound, as he always did to tease her because she said it annoyed her because his voice is not that much good. But do you know, sometimes on still I also feel like that someday they will walk through the window, that open window. She stopped talking with a little shiver. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt entered the room with a series of apologies for being late. Now, hold the tragedy story just over it, and she stopped talking with a little shiver, and it just came to relief to Frampton when the aunt entered into the room and with a sorry for being late. I hope Vera has been amusing you. Now, the girl name is Vera. So she said, I hope Vera has been entertaining you. She has been very interesting, Frampton said. I hope you don't mind the open windows, said Mrs. Sappleton briskly. My husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come in this way. Now, Vera has already just make a story and told him, and then the Mrs. Sappleton also said that would you don't mind to open the window because my husband and brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come to in this way. They have been out for snipe, that a bird with a long straight beak, in the marshes today. Marshes means places near a lake or the sea that often flood and always wet. So they will make a fine mess over my poor carpets. So they will come from the window. She rattled on cheerfully about the shooting and the scarcity of birds. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible because one side Vera is saying something and another side Mrs. Sappleton is saying something. So Mr. Frampton is just totally confused and horrible. He made a desperate but not very successful effort to turn the talk to a less miserable topic, but he saw that Mrs. Sappleton was giving him only a part of her attention. Her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window and the lawn beyond. And now, Mr. Frampton, just think about that. I don't think so that he is very comfortable to talk with me because she is not making the eye contact. She is continuously, constantly staying the past things or just staying the open window and the lawn beyond. The doctors agree in ordering me complete rest. They have asked me to avoid any excitement or too much physical exercise, he said. Then he said that the doctors also agree to order me to take complete rest and to avoid all the excitement and physical exercise. No, said Mrs. Sappleton in a voice which only replaced a yawn at the last moment. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but not to what Frampton was saying, and suddenly only just she said no in a very low voice, but suddenly she just become alert attention, but not for the Frampton saying, but for what? Here they are at last, she cried, and then she just said, here they are at last, just in time for tea, and don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes? Now she just said, here they are at last, and just in the timing of tea timing, and they just came entered and with the muddy up to the eyes, and means from the top that bottom to top they are in fully muddy up. Frampton shivered slightly and turned towards the niece, but the child was staring out through the open window with horror in her eyes. Feeling a shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung round in his seat and looked in the same direction. In the deepening twilight, three figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms, and one of them was additionally burdened with a white coat hung over his shoulders. A tried brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Noiselessly, they neared the house, and then a hoarse, young voice chanted out of the dusk, "I said, Bertie, why do you bound?" Now, the whole tragedy just come up or just in the present way, and Frampton just a little bit shivered slightly and turned his neck, and in the horror in her eyes, and just see in the see through the open window, and all these things come into a feeling of shock of nameless fear, and all these things just come in the present or in the real one. Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat and ran. And then, after watching these three persons, he just grabbed wildly his stick, hat, and ran from there. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid imminent collision. And from there, a cyclist also coming along from the road had to run into the hedge. Hedge means a line of bushes or small trees planted very close together, so also had to run into the bushes to avoid that just is about to happen, to avoid just all these things. "Here we are, my dear," said the bearer of the white coat, coming through the window, fairly muddy but most of it's dry. "Who was that who dashed out as we came up?" And then Mrs. Sappleton's husband said, "Who was there where as we are just coming up, why he ran from there?" "A most extraordinary man, a Mr. Nuttall," said Mrs. Sappleton. "He could only talk about his illness, and went off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. One would think he had been seen a ghost. I expect it was the spaniel," said the niece calmly. "He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of stray dogs, and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures grinning and foaming just above him, enough to make anyone lose their nerve." Now again, that again Vera make a story that why Mr. Nuttall just go from there or ran from there. Then again, she make a story that maybe he had a horror of dogs, and then again create a fully dramatic story. Fantastic stories at short notice was her specialty, and that is the last line, that fantastic stories at short notice means a short time for preparation was her a skill in which she was expert, a totally expert in that. So this chapter is like first She just make a story regarding all the open window, and then she again make instantly a story regarding the for Mr. Nuttall. So this is all the chapter which is written by Hector Hugh Munro. Thank you.